welcome to Poker's Living Podcast. My name is Panji and
Jen.
And today we have a new episode like we always do every week. And we were talking about mindset, and it's something that I think a lot of us will benefit from. Learning how to, learning how to affirm ourselves when we're talking about mindset, right? It's just having good thoughts, not just good thoughts, but thoughts that will continue to help us to think in a positive way, and having a mindset of not just knowing our own way of doing things, but also having the thoughts of also trying to step out and learning how to continue to grow in other ways as well. So it's a great topic. So looking forward to talk about this. So I'll hand it off to you.
Awesome. Yeah, well, because mindset is absolutely the key of every other area of our life, because the way we think, our thoughts around things are how we're going to execute or, perform in our life. So whether that's in our marriage, in our health, in our walk with God, any relationships that we have, it's all tailored around our thoughts and our mindset. And the power of our thoughts is crazy, because we can hold on to one negative thought or fear or worry or doubt, and if we don't know how to catch it, it can cripple our whole day, week, month, year. It can just kind of send us into this vicious cycle, which, we see it all the time. There's so much anxiety, depression, stress, just, people stuck with those negative emotions. And I think, we can both face those same things as well. And what we want to talk about today is really like understanding first the power of our thoughts, but then when we do have those negative thoughts come in, how can we catch them to let our minds be renewed by the power of God working in us, so that we can think about things to help us go back into that state where we have love coming out of our life, or creativity or joy, versus that fear and that doubt.
Yeah, and somebody once says, what you think becomes. So whatever you think in your mind, as long as you keep thinking the same thing, it's going to start to become whatever that thing is in your mind. So, and it's the same thing that you had on the board too, is like what we focus on grows, right? And whatever it is there's this thing, I forgot what the name is, but like if you bought a car, for example,
Reticular activating system.
Yeah. You buy a certain car, and it's like you went and got this car because you've never seen, you've seen it, but you don't see it quite often. But the moment you buy the car, and then everything, like every single time, you're like, wait a minute, it's over there. Everything's just popping, right? But it's the same thing with your mind, right? The things that you think about, the things that you put in your mind, the things that you listen to, all those things play a factor in how you function in a day-to-day, or in the decision making in the day-to-day on the things that you do, or how you make those decisions. So it's really important to focus on the things that will continue to help you move forward, right? And it's not so much so, this is not so much of like a willpower thing, but also making it like a lifestyle, so that when you start your day, you're not stuck in a circle of, okay, if something is not going well, I already told you that was not going to go well. No, that's not a positive way of thinking. How can I, instead of doing that, how can I use this learning moment to make it better? Or how can I use this learning moment to see what I'm doing that I could improve on, right? That is completely a different mindset versus, I already knew this was not going to work, so it is what it is at this point. You can't continue to focus on doing that. So,
you said something there about like taking that moment, and I think that is key to it, because if you can catch a thought where you are maybe spiraling in a negative place, and you can catch that thought, it can be a moment. Actually, I just had this conversation with our daughter the other day where she's like, it's just not a good day. I'm like, Is it not a good day or not a good moment? Do you want to choose to be happy, or do you want to choose to stay sad? And she's like, I want to be happy. I'm like, okay, well, let's start to think about some things that make us smile and, work through that, so that way that one moment doesn't take root and then like our whole day is kind of out of whack. And so you also mentioned something about those reoccurring thoughts. When we have those negative thoughts, it's typically the same cycle of ones that kind of root us. And so really understanding, like, what am I listening to, focusing on what's going on? Is it a cue where I actually need to do something and like change something in my life because my alarm is going off, where this is something that needs to be addressed? Like, the stove is burning, I need to turn that off, and I don't want to lose that thought until the stove's turned off. Or is it something that is trying to weigh us down, that is keeping us captive, where it's a lie that we've spoken over ourselves, that we're rooting, that we need to actually let go of? I mean, I talk to clients all the time that they don't feel worthy, or they feel like they're not good enough, or those thoughts that they keep and root in them, where those aren't true. Those aren't true thoughts. Those are thoughts that they put in their head. So what is the truth? I am loved. I am worthy. God paid the price for me to be his son or his daughter. Like, that is the truth. So it's renewing, allowing God to renew our minds so we can take those thoughts captive, and like those ones that are lies, maybe writing those down, and beside it write the truth of what you really are, and allowing that to absorb in your soul. And even if you don't believe it at first, because you probably won't, it takes time for you to actually believe it, rather than I'm not worthy, or nobody loves me, or blah, blah, blah. I am lovable, and I am a child of God. Okay, so when you hear that negative thought, Lord, I thank you that you love me and that you continue to show me my worth and my value in you. So you're just using that as a cue to pray and allowing God to renew our minds so that we can, focus on what is true, what is helpful, and what's going to continue to help us to move forward.
Yeah, it's just like the thing we were watching yesterday. They said we have 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day, and out of that, 90% of it are repetitive. So if you think about that, like, whatever you're thinking in your mind, whether it's positive or negative, there's a good chance you're repeating the thoughts in your head. So being able to catch those thoughts right away, so that you can say, okay, man, this is not it, right? And asking yourself the question, and I love this question, is like, what is true and what is helpful? What is true and what is helpful? And I love that, because that's something that I have to practice that, because I work with young adults. I think some days college kids, and that's something that I have to always kind of stop myself and say, okay, is this true, or is this something that I'm making in my head? Okay, and if so, how, based on what my reaction is going to be, is my reaction going to be helpful, right? So for me, at the end of the day, it's almost like you get to choose how you react, and you get to choose based on whatever you choose, or how you choose to react. It kind of helps out with the outcome of what that is. So for me, choosing to say, okay, for the two of us, she might be having a day, and I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, well, she's grumpy today. Well, she's grouchy today. And if I keep telling myself that, is that true? Is that truly what's going on? Or I can go up to her and ask her, hey, what's going on? It seems like your day's off. Like you just did. She just asked me, she's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm tired. Right? Instead of her thinking that there's something wrong, in my head, it's just as simple as you asking that question. And that is helpful, because not only is it helpful for her, it's helpful for me, because I get to express actually how I feel, which is something that is new. We just started working on this last year, and we can actually live it out, right? I am tired. That's how I feel. And just being honest with each other, and it goes a long ways. And then she knows, okay, all right, he's tired. There's nothing compared to in the past. Then we start assuming assumption. not good.
No, and that is so powerful and important because we make up so many stories all the time. We're making up stories in our head, like what other people are thinking or saying or experiencing, what we're thinking, saying, or experiencing, and what is actually true. So we really want to look into that, like what is true, like because he's right. I asked how he was doing, and because he didn't seem like chipper or whatever, and he said he's tired. I could then say, okay, he's tired. Do we know our own thoughts? Do we know how we're truly feeling? Do we actually look at that? Because sometimes we might let things kind of get to us when in reality we're tired or hungry or need, a little bit of time to be quiet, or we, maybe need to listen to something that's going to encourage our soul, or maybe we need a cup of coffee with a good friend. What's going on inside of us, like are we in tuned with what that is, and then to be able to express that with those relationships that are closest, because mindset goes vastly into relationships, because if one of us is not thinking clearly, it's going to affect our marriage. It's going to affect how we parent our kids. It's going to affect how we show up at work. It's going to ripple. And so really taking that time to say, okay, what am I focusing on right now? What is really going on in my head? Is it true or is it helpful?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not true and it's not helpful, then we just can dismiss that thought. And so that's as simple as like, okay, this thought, because usually thoughts can, just kind of come in, and we can say, okay, is this a thought that I want to keep? Nope. Okay, Lord, I thank you for renewing my mind and giving me thoughts of creativity, of love, of joy. Like I use it as a prayer, is how I kind of work through it every time. Like whenever I'm having a negative thought, it's a cue. And Lord, thank you for renewing my heart, renewing my mind, helping me focus on what is true, what is lovely, what is going to build up or encourage somebody. Even if you have a negative thought about somebody else, like let's say I had a negative thought about my husband. Is that true? Is that helpful? Okay, I want to dismiss that. Lord, I thank you for my husband. I thank you for who he is as your son and what you're doing in his life. Like for me, it's just like a cue to pray when any of those negative thoughts ever come into my head.
So, like, besides prayer, right? There's many other ways. What other ways, practical ways, do you use to transform negative thoughts into positive?
Mm-hmm. So another very practical way, and I just did this with our daughter the other day too, was, okay, what are we grateful for? So right now you're feeling grumpy because you didn't have your favorite food, whatever. So, and then, okay, so she's thinking, I need to have my favorite food right now whenever I wanted it. Okay, well, that's not really grateful, like, so what are you grateful for? And like kind of really thinking about like writing that gratitude journal, or even writing down your thoughts and transforming them. Sometimes when we even say things out loud, like where, you have somebody trusted that you can go to, you can realize, oh, I just made up a giant story in my head going into this negative space that wasn't even a true story. I just was making it up. So sometimes being able to have that person in your life where you can just be open and honest and freely share whatever with, and then they can see from a different lens because they're not experiencing the emotion of it, and be able to speak that truth and life into us. Another quick tip is when we are in our emotions, when we're in that part of our brain, to not make any quick decisions or even have any like tough or hard conversations when you're feeling the emotion. So if you're feeling like angry or like overly sad, or whatever that is, if you need to talk to somebody, that's different, but not like reacting in that moment. Actually taking some time, pause, get some water, take some deep breaths, really like reflect on, okay, is this true? Is this helpful? And then moving forward to be able to respond in a way that you actually want to, versus lashing out in anger and then regretting it later.
Yeah, and those are really good practical ways to channel those thoughts into positive instead of keeping them as negatives. And I think another thing is just kind of looking at those opportunities, having a mindset of growth, right? You're trying to grow every single time, even in the times that might not be as uplifting, the times that are challenging. It's how you look at things, like, which is your mindset. It's just how you look at the grand scheme, the grand picture of everything. In the moment, it might not seem as energetic, positive, the way you want it to look like. But at the end of the day, ask yourself, what am I supposed to learn from this? That's the question that I usually ask myself when I'm going through something like that, something negative. Like, if something negative is happening, it's like, okay, I gotta ask myself, well, one, how did this come into being? And then number two, how can I use this to make it positive? What can I learn from this? Because I believe that in every single moments that we have, there's an opportunity for us to grow, whether it's positive or negative. There's opportunities to grow in many different times and in many different ways. So channeling that and asking yourself those questions so that it doesn't seem like it's just one-sided, but trying to look at things from two different perspectives. And that's where I think you said it really well, is having somebody that you can sit together and ask them those questions, like, this thing is happening in my life. Am I overthinking this, or how do you see it? How do you see it from your side, and get somebody else's perspective, right? And just get stuck in your own box, because that can go into many different ways.
And with that, make sure it's a truth teller that's not going to just tell you what you want to hear. Because we can have people in our life that are just going to validate your, oh yeah, you should feel sorry for yourself, because that's not helpful. Yep. That's important, because there is actually, with every story, there are three sides. There's person A's side, person B's side, and then there's the truth. Mm-hmm. So, there's usually somewhere in between those two sides, because we're only seeing things from that one perspective. And so something I like to do if I'm in a hard situation is like, okay, let's look at that from their perspective. How might they be seeing that? Because me seeing it through my lens, I may be missing something. And so evaluating that too. And another thing that we teach actually through the 7 steps of purpose living is step number 6 is actually what's called apply lid. So what that is L, look at the situation. So what's actually happening here? Mm-hmm. So let's say somebody cuts you off in traffic and you are running late and you're feeling angry. Okay, so look at the situation. What is happening here? Listen, okay, how is my body responding? Am I staying calm? Am I just, being able to go through and have that patience of there? Or am I feeling angry? Listen to the cues, what's happening in your body. Am I supposed to learn something from this? So am I maybe need to leave a little earlier so that I'm not rushed? And then if something happens in traffic, that I can stay calm? Do I need to, have a good podcast or worship music or something that I'm listening into my car versus listening to something that's gonna get into my head and make me feel negative? What's going on? What can we learn from this situation? Eyes identify, who am I? I am a child of God who is peaceful and I respond in a calm manner. Okay, that's who I am. Because of who I am, D is decide, what's my decision? I'm just going to be patient and enjoy my rest of my drive, because me being angry because somebody cut me off in traffic is not going to be fruitful at all. I'm just going to be mad, and they still just keep going. And maybe they're in a rush to the hospital. We don't know their situation, but we get to decide if we want to be grumpy or if we want to keep peace. Every decision in our mind, like what I talked to our daughter about, do you want to be happy or choose to be happy and have fun? Or do you just want to be grumpy? You get to decide. It's your choice. Yeah. But actually recognizing it as a decision. And when we're in the moment, know that it's okay to ask or talk to somebody and be like, okay, I'm having these random thoughts. I know they're not helpful. This is what's going on. Help me to see a different perspective. It's okay to ask for help. So I do want to say that. It's not oh, you just have to power through and figure it out and stay positive all the time. It's okay to talk to somebody about it. but have that open growth mindset of how am I going to keep moving forward versus I'm going to stay stuck and validate why I have the right to be grumpy kind of thing.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, it all comes down to making it a choice. It's always a choice that you gotta make. Um, Now there are certain things that are within your control, and there's certain things that are out of your control. You stay and work with the things that are in your control.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are out of your control, they are out of your control. There's nothing you can do about that but pray about it and pray for the other person if you are in a challenging situation with another person. But those things that you are in control of is going to be your choice to make the right decision or to put yourself in the right mind frame to make the decision that will be helpful for you and put you in a growing position to continue to grow and mature in those areas. But at the end of the day, I think is a choice that you got to make. And sometimes, guess what? I got to take a seat back and just kind of reflect on what's going on. And I have to ask myself and be honest of, okay, what could I have done to make that situation less hectic than it is? Because sometimes we like to watch other people and point at other people and completely put the blindfolds and not think about what we could have done to not escalate the situation. And that's a whole nother thing that we all got to think about, right? Because at the end of the day, it takes two people to cause craziness. But if you're willing to sit down and say, okay, you know what? I'll take ownership and go sit down with that person and say, okay, listen, yes, we might have not seen eye to eye, but I'll take ownership on this, that I could have done this better. And I apologize for it. It goes a long ways. And it's the same thing in just whatever you're doing with yourself. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have just kind of take an assumption side and be like, okay, I kind of knew this person and I know that they were going to do that anyway. So, no, that's not the right way. Put yourself in a situation and surround yourself. And I love that you said that. Surround yourself with people that are willing to tell you the truth, not what you want to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So.
Yep, it's definitely the power of our mind is something that we are constantly going to want to grow in and continue to just learn how to take those thoughts captive. The Word of God takes every thought captive and renew it into the mind of Christ. So every thought that we have, think about it. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it building people up? Is it coming from a state of love? If it's not from God. And we want to take those thoughts captive. We don't want those negative thoughts or those negative fears. If it's from fear, it's not from God. So any of those thoughts that we hold, we need to pluck them out. We need to root out all of that negative junk and asking God to do it in us and keeping our heart and our thoughts on things that are going to help us to move forward. So whatever is true, whatever is lovely, whatever is building people up and ultimately glorifying God, that's where we want to focus. That focus can grow and learn how to take those thoughts captive so that we can live a life filled with hope, filled with love, filled with joy, filled with peace that surpasses understanding that only comes from God's power working in us. And so He can do it. He promises it in His Word, but we have to receive it and learn how to continue to mature and grow up into it.
Perfect. I just heard this and I thought it was real cool. I'll put my own spin on it. It says that, let's put it this way. The way to put it is that being a man is hard work. It's heart work, and it's worth the work. So you gotta ask yourself, being a believer and being a follower of Christ, and you're trying to live your life to glorify His name, you can substitute your name in there and say, you know what, being so and so is hard work. Being so and so is heart work, and it is worth the work. You can continue to work on yourself because God knows we are not going to get there without His help.
No.
So,
good deal. Well, thank you. And like we said, if you need a community to be able to do life with, or, are really having those issues or those things in your life where you're like, I need a perspective, I need a mentor, I need a coach to guide me, that's what we do. With Purpose Living Coaching, we're here to walk beside you, to speak that life in truth, and allowing God to bring healing in every area of our life, and our mind is a huge part of that. So,
yep. And we are Purpose Living Coaching.
Training to do life God's way.
We'll see you guys next week.